Hey guys, Savage Recovery here. How are my savages doing? We're about to get down into the Nick Cannon comments, and we're gonna talk about how racist it is, and about Professor Griff, and a little bit about my thoughts and what's going on here. Do me a favor, subscribe, hit the bell, get the notifications, share this video, get out. These are the influencers that we have that are putting out racist ideas and helping divide the country. Comment, like, share. Let's get this out there.
Is then when we talk about the power of melanated people, when we talk
Mhm.
about who we really are as guys, and
Right.
understanding that our melanin is so power and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black, the reason why they fear is because the lack that they have of it.
So there isn't a lack of fear of black people. Like we do as white folks lack melanin. We don't have as much melanin as a black person actually does. But we don't fear them. If you go back in history and look at history, the Moors came into Europe and they conquered parts of Europe. They were black. If you look at the Mongolians were not white and they conquered a lot of Asia and also Europe. Conquering and violence is not an expression of white people. That's an expression of people. You have Indian tribes that warred with each other. You had the Aztecs and you had the Mayans. They warred. Like there were multiple people of color throughout history fought with other people. White people didn't just come down from the Caucasus Mountains, which the Caucasus Mountains are in Russia, and that's not where all white people come from. But the difference between white people and black people is we were more proficient with conquering. That like we won. If you go back in time during the Roman Empire, there were multiple groups of people that lived under Roman authority, and race wasn't looked at the way that race is today. Race now is more of a more modern idea. Now it obviously is hundreds of years old or whatnot, but throughout the time that we've been on this earth, race has not been thought about or looked about or spoke about in the same manner that it is today, or even 100 or 200 years ago. But you have the Chinese that conquered. Like there isn't a culture on this earth or type of race, or type of people, or color of people that hasn't conquered or taken over other people's land. Like that's just not the case.
So then when you see what Dr. Francis C. Welsing talked about, is that fear and
Just genetic
that
annihilation.
deficiency of when
Mm-hmm.
you have a person that has the lack of pigment, the
Right.
lack of melanin,
Right.
that they know that they will be annihilated. So therefore, however they got the power, they have the lack of compassion. That
Mm-hmm.
melanin comes with compassion. Melanin comes with soul. That
Mm-hmm.
we call it soul. We soul brothers and sisters. That's the melanin that connects us. So
Right.
the people that don't have it are a little, and I'm gonna say this carefully, are a little less. And where the term actually comes from, because I'm bringing it all the way back around
Okay.
to Minister Farrakhan, to where they may not have the compassion or the when they were sent to the mountains of Caucasus, when they didn't have the power of the sun, that the sun then started to deteriorate
Mm-hmm.
them. So then they're acting out of fear.
Melanin doesn't give you compassion. Non-melanin doesn't give you passion. Like there's no way to quantify that belief, passion, and melanin. Also, why look at Africa? Why would it? You would think that Africa would be the most peaceful place if that was the point. Like melanin isn't a thing that makes people passionate or not compassionate. Cultures, beliefs. Most groups want an in-group preference. They want their children to marry people like them or their grandchildren to look like them. It's not uncommon. The Chinese don't like black people. Like at the end of the day, you can't just say that it's a white person thing. Also, majority of the country isn't racist. The only people that were racist in the states during slavery were the Dixiecrats, which became the Democrats. All of the institutional racism that you talk about were started by the Democrats. Welfare, Jim Crow, slavery, all those things were done by Democrats. So to save white people is the whole idea. Like, that's not genuine. Most of the country, only 5% of the country had slaves. During the time of slavery, black people owned slaves. The first person in America to own a slave was a black man. Indians had slaves. Like, the Muslims had slaves. They castrated their slaves. Right now in Libya, the Muslims are doing a slave trade. During the time of slavery, there were more European slaves brought into Africa than there were African slaves brought to America. The English enslaved the Irish. The Africans enslaved each other. The Indians enslaved. Like, everyone has practiced slavery. That is not a white person thing. That is a people thing. People have been doing it forever. Muhammad became rich because he was a slave owner. That's how he gained power. He was part of the slave trade. What you're saying is not true. Why do you live in Calabasas with white people, mostly white people, if they have no compassion, if they're just savages?
They're acting out of low self-esteem. They're acting out of a deficiency. So therefore, the only way that they can act is evil. The only way they have to rob, steal, rape, kill, and
Fight or flight, okay.
in order to survive.
You're doing your people a disservice. If you look at the FBI crime statistics, blacks commit over 50% of the violent crime. Only about 6% or 5% of that population is males from the ages of like 15 to 40. It's only about 5% of the country does over 50% of the crime. Like, white people are not just out here raping and killing. Back in the day, when you had slave owners, the slave master was raping and killing the slaves. That wasn't white people. That was a portion of white people. That, like, a lot of slaves had white people that worked on them that were sharecroppers that were just as low as the blacks. That what you're saying isn't true. You're painting history in a false dichotomy to try to prove a point. You're saying that people that don't have melanin are evil. That you cannot say that genetically people are evil. Like, you're being a racist. Anything that a Democrat or a slave owner or any racist person says about black people, you're making the exact same argument about white people. You need to stop pushing this bullshit. White people are not acting in fear. If that was the case, Obama would have never became president. You would have never got civil rights. You would have never got civil rights. You wouldn't be a millionaire. You wouldn't be living in Calabasas. It was just facts. There had to be a law during slavery that you couldn't mix Irish slaves with black slaves because black slaves were worth more money than the Irish slave. And they were mixing them to get a higher dollar for the children. White slaves were worth less money than black slaves. Like, the idea that you're pushing about history is not true. Slavery was bad. You're right. We can all agree upon that. But to then turn around and say white people are evil is racist, and it's not true.
Exactly.
So then these people who didn't have what we had, and when I say we, I speak of the melanated people.
Right.
They had to be savages. They had to be barbaric. Because they're in these Nordic mountains. They're in these rough, torrential environments. So they're acting as animals.
Right.
So they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They're the ones that are actually the true savages. And then they built up such this.
Again, white people are not savages. Like, a lot of the Enlightenment came from Europe. The Vikings, they were savages, but they're no different than the Mongolians. The Mongolians were savages. The Muslims were savages. There are plenty of cultures that have participated in the exact same behaviors. The fact of the matter is what people don't realize is Muslims Muhammad was white. All right. Not only was he white, but also he was allowed to have sex with his slaves. In the Quran, it talks about it being a duty to have sex with your sex slaves. But even black people take on the Muslim faith and don't know about that. A lot of the stuff that you're telling is lies. There's a lot of lies that have been told to black people to keep black people emotional and down in a lower vibration. And that isn't all of society or all of white people. A lot of this shit comes from the Democrats and the real racists, the real KKK. It's not your average white person. It's not. I'm sorry to tell you that, but it's not. Even Muhammad Ali was tricked into this, that he changed his name from Cassius Clay, which Cassius Clay was a man that bought slaves and freed them and gave them education. He was not a slave owner. He was only about educating and giving better lives to black people, and he had multiple attempts on his life because of this. And Muhammad Ali changed his name to Muhammad Ali and said in an interview he wanted to take the name of his slave owner and get rid of it and get a name more like his people. Muhammad Ali didn't even know that the name that he was given was of a man that fought for blacks. He was brainwashed into thinking that Muhammad Ali was a name like his people, but the difference was Muhammad was a white slave owner that sold black slaves. In the Quran, it talks about him having a person follow him and become one of his people, and later finding out that he was a black slave, and that he made a rule that no more black people could do it. He said that Ethiopians were raisin heads. He said the devil looked like a black man. Like, the propaganda that's pushed on the black community that they spew out and they take as facts is not true. A lot of people need to research this stuff.
This, I don't want to say warrior, but they built up such this conquering barbaric mentality that they're coming out of Europe. They then said, in order for us to survive, we have to take what's not ours. And then they went into the land that actually where we are originated. And instead of trying to make friends, they said, we want what you got. Because there's this mentality of whether it's the Caesars or even that we have to conquer.
Right.
So I say all that to say the context. And when we speak of whether it's Jewish people, white people, Europeans, the Illuminati, they were doing that as survival tactics to stay on this planet.
Right, because
we never had to do that.
Right, because they've learned when they circumnavigated the globe and they ran into these islands and these places, and we were already there to greet them.
Right, with open arms.
With open arms, teaching them, but then
they were deficient.
They were deficient, so they wanted to get what they thought we had, and we did have it. So the rape took place of the woman. The theft took place of the natural resources.
And then that's when their disease,
exactly.
That's where their mentality, because I'm trying to get to that place of how they were able to get control over the gods. How were they able to get control over their original
once they
people?
learned that, though, and now they raped and impregnated, left and came back, and they saw the child lighter, they said, wow, that's when they learned genetics. Genetic annihilation. So now you have to set up a system of white supremacy.
Like, we actually don't know what exactly happened 100%. Like, it was so long ago. Like, they could have opened us with open arms. There could have been multiple things. But the fact of the matter was, it wasn't to take from the gods. Black people are not gods. I'm sorry to tell you, they're not. We're all just men. We're just people. There are no gods on this planet. The Bible clearly states that the people that did not worship Yahweh, he was going to curse them, and they wouldn't listen. They were cursed from their behavior, and they were going to be put into their enemy's land. Their seed would be planted in an enemy's land, and it would be not their own. Like, every culture has gone over and conquered other places for resources. China right now is fighting India for water. Like, Any culture is going to take from another culture and try to conquer for resources. That's a human thing. That's an animal thing. Animals do it in the wild. Why would we be any different? There's only so many resources. There's only so much land. There's only so much food. These things are going to happen. It's not. There's good and evil in all men. Like, to say that you guys are gods. So you're going to tell me that y'all are gods and white folks are evil, and we were able to take the knowledge and everything from the gods, but we're not gods. We're just evil animals. Like, come on, dude. Like, you are so full of it. You're so full of it. I'm not going to keep watching this, but they talk about the 13 families and the Illuminati, and they talk about Trump as a racist, and he's protecting white supremacy because he's afraid of fear, because in 2050 everyone is going to be colored, as Nick says, even though I'll still be alive and I will be colored. It's not going to happen. I can't get any sort of pigment in my skin because I'm an Irish Englishman. But Trump isn't building a wall to stop America's whiteness and purity. It's to stop human trafficking. That's what's happening. Human trafficking around the world is being shut down. That's the facts. And most of the people that are victim to this are Asians and black people, people with melanin. So it's not a purity thing. My son is mixed. Like, this isn't, like, you're paying a false light. You're using your communist bullshit to put tension between races, which is going to help the people that want to overthrow this country overthrow it, because you're putting seeds of dissent more. Like, why is it that in my neighborhood that there's no problems? We don't have racial conflict when I'm the only white dude here. It's not because I'm outnumbered. It's not because I'm scared. Like, because we're just normal people trying to live our lives. We just want to be left alone. I want to play with my kid. I want to go to work. Not everyone is waking up plotting to ruin black people's lives, especially Griff, who was a celebrity and also a militant, but never did anything as a militant. He just talks a bunch of conspiracy bullshit. He probably is a plant from the CIA. And you have Nick, who made millions and millions of dollars being a famous teenager and having a rap career and a stand-up comedian and a writer. Like, Farrakhan's been saying crazy stuff for years and he's still alive. So why is it that Malcolm and Martin Luther were trying to get actual change, and Malcolm changed his military ideas and wanted to work with white people, and he got killed? Why is it that MLK was working with white people and making something actually happen in the black community and getting civil rights, and he was killed? But Farrakhan says crazy racist shit to divide people, and he's still alive. He's been alive for a long, long, long time. It's weird. It's crazy. The people that plot division stay alive, and the people that want change and actually have a solution die. That's just my thoughts, guys. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments. Like, subscribe, share. You know what it is, guys. So, just wanted to say, there's Ash, and there's Katana. That's Katana, that's Ash. Those are my two dogs. As you can see, my male and my female. Stay savages, guys.